Growing a business is hard, but it does not have to be. Once a week, we take a break from the hustle and bustle in business to talk about innovations and what's new in the C-suite. This is the Fractional C-Suite Retreat, and I'm Joseph Frost. Pull up a seat at the fire, grab a drink, smoke a cigar, and just join me as we relax, learn, and get inspired. This retreat is sponsored by your CMO, helping organizations grow with better marketing strategy. Welcome. Today's guest is the longest tenured sales acceleration advisor. He is a physicist that has learned how to sell. Say that twice. And he is the father of three amazing daughters and lives in boring Portland, Oregon, a place, but not a state of mind. I think that's how you explained it, right? Welcome, John.
Thank you, Joe. It's a pleasure to be here today.
So I have one question I like to start each of my podcasts with, and it's a simple one. If you were to share something with the C-suite, an owner or a C-suite member today, what's the one thing you think they really need to be thinking about right now that maybe isn't on their mind?
Not to make this too time stamped, but we know that we have a lot going on in our country right now, with the new president, with tariffs going on, etc. The one thing that being a past owner of two companies, the one thing that always got me was unknowns. And right now, if I was going to tell an owner, and I am telling my owners and my clients, take a breath. Just take a breath, let whatever's happening play out a little bit. Yeah, we have to plan for the future, but frankly, making the wrong decision's worse than making no decision right now.
Yeah, I like that. Making the wrong decision is worse than making no decision right now. You can say that a lot of times about business.
It's not always true, but in this case, when you're seeing all these changes, all these things going on, right now, I think it's time to take that breath and see what's going to happen in the next month or 2 months. I do believe that often owners don't make a decision, and I have to tell them that that is a decision, right? And so one of the things sitting in, an executive team or with the owner of a company, we have to go, what is the information we have today? What do we see on the handwriting on the wall, and make a decision? And, one thing that I try and coach sales leaders and owners about, and that is a decision isn't in concrete. It's in sand. You can change a decision once you have more information. And It doesn't look badly on you to do that. And a lot of owners are afraid to change their decisions, but we have to.
Yeah, I think that's one aspect of it for sure. We don't want to make a decision because we're afraid to change that decision. The other aspect that I share with leaders is that there are decisions that you can't turn around from. Those are the ones you got to be really cautious and considerate about before making. The analogy is that if you can open the door and you can close it behind you, and that's a decision you made, and if you can turn around and go back out the door, then you can change it. But if you open that door and it's locked forever after you walk through it, that's a decision that can't be reversed. That's the one they got to be very careful about, making sure it's the right decision.
Yeah, I run a lot of sales teams, and one of the things in our sales meetings we talk about, you can make a small bet, but don't bet my farm.
Yeah.
Don't make a decision that's going to hurt the company morally. So, those are decisions that the owner has to make, the sales leader and the executive team have to be all aligned on.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the analogy. Another one I share a lot is the decision tree. And it goes like this. You've got the leaf decisions, and you pull a leaf off a tree, it's not going to kill the tree. Those are your everyday decisions that you're expected to make in your role without ever letting anybody else know. That's just the stuff you're expected to do day to day. And there's the branch decision. You break a branch, do a little bit of harm, but not a ton of harm. That's a decision that you can make also every day, but you might just tell somebody about it. Then there's the trunk decision, and that's a bigger decision. You start chipping away at the trunk, you're doing some damage. You should bring someone else in to collaborate on that decision. And then there's the root decision. And when you have these root decisions and you're going to damage the root, the whole team needs to be involved. And that's the whole C-suite. And if you think about decision making going down that path, it's a great way that I've found to help people understand when to make a decision and when to push it back up and when to keep it, at their level, and when to bring others in and when not to. So that I like that analogy as well.
I love that analogy. Sometimes you have to prune part of that tree, but people should know that before you go prune it. We're talking a lot about fractionals and small businesses. A small business owner, if it's 5 million or 50 million, they're generally kind of lonely. They're sitting in their office. They're trying to make decisions. Often, they started the company. They're the visionary in the company. Often they don't have a big team around them where they can discuss decisions. And as a fractional sales leader, and you as a fractional marketing leader, I try and talk to owners that they're not really by themselves. They can bring people like you and me in with vast experience, 40 plus years of experience, and be that sounding board and ask those questions. We look at the best practices before they go off down a road that they may later regret. And so in today's world, fractional, 15 years ago, the only fractional I'd ever heard of was a CFO. And from there today, there's almost fractional everything, where people like you and I who've had long careers in big business and or small are able to use that expertise to help these small businesses make the right decisions and scale their companies.
Yeah. And I think it's certainly decision-making is a major reason why you would want to bring a fractional into the conversation. But then executing and leading the execution of those decisions ongoing, because I find a lot of owners wear too many hats, and when you're in the C-suite, if you're wearing too many C-suite hats, they're really heavy. If you can take one of those hats on and give it to a fractional that can be that strategic executive leader that you trust, then you can focus on the hat you're supposed to be wearing, which is visionary, which is growth, which is scaling, which is operations, whatever it is. And a head of sales or head of marketing can do what they're really good at and supposed to be doing.
A lot of my clients are running on the EOS model. And it's interesting that many visionaries are also sitting in the sales leader seat or the sales and marketing leader seat. I mean, it's just often that way. And eventually the executive team says, you should be running the company, not running the sales team. And that's why I'm often brought in into a company like that, particularly if the implementer, the EOS implementer, and I are familiar with each other, because then I can come in and I can basically put best practices in, build out an infrastructure that's scalable, hire the right people, put the right people in the right seats, fix the comp plans, which are always a mess, and build an engine and a car, get it running. And then it's time for me to step back, hire my replacement with a full-time, could be a manager, a director, a VP, and SVP, depending on the size of the company. But bringing that person in before that car is running means now they have to worry about fixing it, not running it. And so as I come in and get it all set up for them, it seems to work really well. We did an analysis at SX for 2023, and on average, a company grows 32% after we've been with them. That's pretty significant growth.
Yeah. Yeah, I concur. When we go in with an engagement, oftentimes it's the owner that's in the marketing seat. Yeah. Or it's a sales leader, frankly, that's in the marketing seat. but it's always somebody that it's the and marketing role is what I always call it. It's who's doing the and marketing. That's the person I want to talk to because it's not their primary focus, but they're really good at marketing from their lens. Specifically, owners have the best understanding of the product or service because they probably built it. They have the best understanding of the market because they've been in it and selling in it for years. And they have the best
They're the
understanding.
best salespeople.
The best
They're by
salespeople.
far the best salesperson.
So you can't tell them, and you can't argue. They're good marketers in their space with what they've done, but they don't know what they don't know. And when you bring in an outside fractional CMO or head of sales, you're bringing in a wealth of knowledge and expertise that you don't have from someone else's life experiences. And that's only going to make your company better. And it's going to make you smarter as well.
And in today's world, marketing is changing so radically. It used to be, we could just send some emails out and they'll come to our place, right? Or, let's do that PPC thing, pay per click. But marketing technology and its integration with the CRM and with sales has changed, dramatically in the last 10 years. And you know this better than I do, but your customer knows so much more about you before sales is ever involved. So marketing's pushing them down the funnel so far that by the time they get to my sales teams, they're pre-qualified. They're already looking at three competitors, right? And they're making a decision. And so sales and marketing has to be so intertwined, so that that handoff and that lead scoring and all those things really happen just automatically. Used to be, used to laugh because I was a sales and marketing vice president, and I believe that they have to be really closely tied just because, sales will always say, well, those leads that marketing gives me, they're no good. Or marketing will go, hey, we give them these great leads and they never follow up on them. So having that really integrated well is important. In most small businesses, be it a manufacturer, be it a distributor, they really don't know what marketing is, right? Marketing's more than just brand awareness. Marketing's more than just lead gen, right? So understanding how those interplay with each other and bringing the right product at the right price to the right customers. The ICP is when I ask my owners often, who's your ideal customer? They just there's this blank stare. Well, so do these people. So using marketing and sales together, they can be scaled and grow.
Yeah, for sure. So you're the longest standing sales acceleration advisor. Not to put years on you, but how many years have you been doing fractional sales work?
I've been doing it for 11. I've been doing it for 10 with sales acceleration, but this is moving into my 11th year. And in January, we had our summit, and I was awarded the Founders Award, which is an award that my peers basically nominate another advisor for. It's only the second year it's been given out, and it was a huge honor to have that. And I've coached and mentored quite a few advisors. We now have 220 across the country, including Canada, and now a couple in England. So we've been growing pretty significantly over those 10 years. Great.
You've probably seen a lot change in the fractional arena in the last 10 years. What have you seen? How's the fractional model, not just for sales but in general, evolved over the last 10 years from your perspective?
10 years ago, 15 years ago, no one even knew the word fractional. You could put it on LinkedIn or put it in somewhere and people go, what is that? They knew part-time, they knew full-time, but fractional was a word that people didn't know. We actually did an analysis of that. And so we started calling ourselves consultants because no one ever typed in fractional. And I don't really like being considered a consultant because I tend not to try and tell owners what to do and hope they do it. I'd rather go in and do it for them and then bring in my replacement that'll keep it going.
Yeah.
But, CFOs, I think, were the first fractionals. There was a company called B2B CFO, and that's the first one that I had ever heard of. And, if you can think of bringing in a CFO, a company gets to a certain size, they really need that strategy. And that started getting acceptance. And then you heard about, fractional sales, fractional CMOs, again, strategic, working and managing the tactics. Then you saw, fractional HR now. And that's becoming a really big thing. And then fractional, the newest one that for me is pretty interesting, and that's a fractional integrator. So it's like a fractional COO, coming in, bringing in best practices. And each of these leaders, have years of experience, know best practices in a large company or a small, and are able to put in those best practices and those things that work. In a small business, it may have been grandpa's. It may be now third generation. I've had one that's fifth generation, right? And they learned what they learned there, but they never really learned how other people are doing it or what's outside of their world. So bringing in a fractional, you get all that great experience at a fraction of the price.
Yeah. Yes, I think it's. I've been in the fractional space about 7 or 8 years, so not quite as long as you have, but in that short period of time, I've seen it explode in the CMO space. There's, what used to be, maybe hundreds of fractional CMOs. There's now thousands, and
Wow.
What constitutes a fractional, although the word I think is a lot more prevalent, it's also not clear to most business owners what it means. And what I'm talking about is on the marketing side, a fractional CMO in my world is someone who's been a VP or CMO in their past and now is kind of choosing this way of life moving forward. But in someone else's definition, it might be somebody who used to be a marketing coordinator, marketing manager that took a class and now calls himself fractional CMO. So it's like buyer beware, because it is more prevalent. There's a lot more people saying they can do it, but not everybody really can do it in the way that I think you and I expect it to be done.
I read a blog just the other day about this, about, buyer beware, because there is no test, there's no licensing to be a fractional anything. And we've all seen that. No, I don't want to sound too old here. That 27-year-old that says, I'm a fractional and I'm going to come in and help you. You have to look at their experience. You have to look at what have they done in the past. Hopefully someone like you referred me into them. So you have experience with me and I can do my job. When I refer in a fractional, and I do it often, it's people I know, people I like, and people I trust. And I'm not going to refer or bring someone in to one of my clients or one of my past clients unless I know they can do the job, because that's my reputation.
Yeah. I'm curious, you've seen fractionals, I'm sure, come and go inside of your organization and outside your organization. What are some of the characteristics that make somebody successful? And then what are some of the characteristics that seem to be common with people that it doesn't work out? And I'll just share my experience. There are really good CMOs that work really well full-time and can't handle the part-time nature or the multitasking nature of a fractional. That would be a characteristic I see. But what are some of the characteristics you see of people that are successful versus aren't successful?
Well, I noticed that you did a blog a week or so ago about a book that I reread at the end of last year called Grit. And I would, more than anything else, success in not just the fractional space, but I think in many spaces, is resilience. The ability to get back up. doing fractional work, particularly you've been in a big corporate environment, one of my biggest problems is I get a new phone and I need to put my email on to now figure out that. I get new software, I get updates, I have to do that. So when you're fractional, you are your own company, even if you're with an organization. And you have to take care of a lot of things that we used to have a lot of support staff doing. You know, the other problem is when I started with SX, I had just finished turning around a company in Southampton, England. And I used to joke that my local newspaper was USA Today. I had just finished a trip that went through 7 countries in 12 days, and I was done flying. But I looked at my LinkedIn and I had 50 people on LinkedIn. I looked at my local network and I went, I'm never in Boring, Oregon, right? How do I have a network? And so being a fractional, the people that tend to do well, they know how to build out that network, be it virtually or in their geolocation. They learn how to find other fractionals, other service providers that are working with that same company size, that ideal client. I think you said yours 5 to 50. I'm 3 to 50. But I've had $100 million clients. But you have to build out that network because they're not just going into Google and typing in, I need a fractional sales leader, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to find you that way. And the way that we get clients in the fractional space is for you walking into an owner's office and he goes, John, I just had to, or Joe, I just had to fire my sales leader because of sexual harassment. That actually did happen. And for you going, oh, I know a guy that does that. He can be your interim, build out your team, and go. Same thing for me. If I'm getting into a space and I need some marketing strategy, I have a new product, I need to roll this out. That's not something I do. I need to bring in a CMO like you that can set that up so we have a really good product launch and go to the right markets at the right price.
Yeah. So being able to build a network, being able to be resilient are two of the characteristics. Anything else that stand out to you?
Well, it really helps if you have a 16-year-old that can put the email on your phone. My children are older than that. So the technical stuff, I mean, there's a lot of work that you have to do that you didn't have to do in the corporate world. And you have to do it. I mean, you and I were talking about mentoring and coaching. It's really, really helpful for any coach, any fractional person should have a coach, should have someone that's going to help them maintain the things they have to do. I have a scorecard. Now, I'm a sales guy, so I've always had a scorecard. I've always had metrics and KPIs, but it's really hard for me to every week fill those out. But if I have an accountability partner, that helps me stay on track and see what I'm doing. What are those things that I'm doing that I know I have to do to get to clients and get things done. In SX, one thing that I've seen, we get really busy. There have been at 2 times over the years where I had clients every day for 5 days a week on site, right? So I still have to do billing. I still have to do answering emails, but I wasn't doing my marketing. Yeah, I did my newsletter, but I wasn't going on meeting new people. I wasn't going to the groups like Provisors or Vistage, etc. And what we find is if you get too busy, you get on a roller coaster. So all of your clients, wait, I'm finishing all my clients. Oh, wait, I got to turn on my marketing engine. And that roller coaster can be frustrating at best, and it can cause you to go, "Why am I doing this?" So I coach a lot of SX advisors that never get on the roller coaster. I don't know your number, you know marketing better than me, but I say 20% of your time has to be in marketing. It has to be out reaching out, keeping close to your network, doing your newsletters, doing your posts on LinkedIn, staying top of mind so that when you're ready to take on another client, people will be there and say, "I know someone that you can help."
Yeah.
What do you see in your CMO? Do you see a similar issue with keeping their marketing going when they get busy?
Yeah, it's like the cobbler's shoes. Our CMOs are great at marketing everybody else but themselves. And I say that a little bit in jest because the ones that get it are understand the value of it and do it well for themselves. But it's harder than doing it for somebody else. Um, there's a lot of non discipline work that goes into being a fractional. So whether you're a marketer or a salesperson or an IT person or an HR person, a larger percent than you think going into it of your job now is not in what you do. It's not marketing. It's not sales. It's not leadership. It's administrative. It's the networking. It's the biz dev, and that's the part that I found most successful fractional CMOs understand and do well is carve out time to do it. And those that don't are either on that roller coaster effect or just get out of it, frankly, and say, I can't do it. I'm going to go back full time.
I find it funny that, at SX, we've all been VPs of sales or higher, SVP, for 20 plus years. And particularly the ones in the corporate world that haven't carried a bag and really sold for 10 plus years, they're not very good at business development, and they have to go back into when they were younger, right, carrying a bag, actually doing sales, and get that mindset back that they are they're providing a service to people that's going to change their lives, but that those people don't know them yet, and they have to do that biz dev, or they're not going to be successful, and the runway's going to go away.
Yeah, I think it's not such a the fractional space is not evolved enough that people know what it's going to be, what it's going to take to be successful in it. And so a lot of people are going through this journey of trying it out. Is this going to work for me? I don't know. And so we get a lot of people that are kind of coming in and putting their foot and toe in the water and then realize, I don't want in this at all. So they come in and out in like less than 3 months. And that's not ideal for anybody. I'd much rather have somebody understand much more of the effort it's going to take and be willing to commit. One of the things you said to me, I think a couple of weeks ago when we talked, was you tell people don't expect to get a client. Don't even try to get a client the first 90 days. If I tell that to somebody that's dipping their toe in the water, they'll never dip. Be like, I need a client in the next 90 days. I can't afford to do nothing for 90 days. And that, I think, is the number one predictor of success is, can you give yourself a 6-month window comfortably to do the right things up front to go find the right partners and the right clients? And if you can be successful. But if you need a client in 6 weeks and otherwise you're off to the next way to make money while you still try to do this on the side, it won't work. And it doesn't work.
No.
And that's what people can't.
Number one, you got to jump into the deep end. You got to believe, right? In SX, we call it, you got to follow the plan. And we have a 6-prong plan on that we train on how to do this. But you got to jump in. When I'm often used to look at people that want to join SX, and we have thousands of people that contact us about joining us, and most don't have the right background nor experience. But when they do, one of the first questions I ask is, if your first, second, or third client offers you $1 million to stay full time, are you going to take it? And if they say yes, I said, would you please go find a job and not join my group, my organization? Because every year, one of my clients asks me to stay. And that's not what I do. I build out sales infrastructure and sales teams. But once they're running really, really well, it's like NASCAR going around in circles is really, really boring to me. And so, no, I'm not staying and driving the car. I'll go hire you someone that drives the car. And we lose more people at SX, more advisors to full-time positions with one of their first clients.
Yeah. And I've lost CMOs for the same reason. It's not common, but it does happen. And I always cheered on. Great, it's a good fit for you, good fit for the client. But that's not ideal for anyone either. Going into fractionals, if you want a full time job, then go after a full time job. If you want to be full time fractional, that's what I like to say. Then we've got to build that together. And there's a foundation that needs to be laid, and there's a lot of the infrastructure that we've created to make it easier for you, and then supporting those clients once you get them so you can scale. And that's
one thing that we found at SX, which is interesting, and it's how fractional work has kind of changed. There are a number of people within advisors within sales acceleration. They're doing it as a lifestyle. They're not there to work 5 days a week. They don't want a lot of clients. They may have one or two clients at a time. And it's because they want to keep their mind in the game. They want to keep, seeing impact to companies. But, they've made a lot of money. Their, requirements aren't near as much as they used to be. And they asked me in January when I was going to retire again. And I've retired twice in my life when I sold both companies. First time I became a raging alcoholic, and it was not good. The second time I tried fishing all over the world, golfing everywhere. I have a farm in Boreal. I grow hot peppers, but I was not having any joy. Because I love to fish. I do, but it didn't give me joy. What gives me joy is seeing the impact that I can make at a client's, at a customer's. I go in, hire the right people, see light bulbs go on, get a CRM that's actually functioning, comp plans that work, forecasts. I had one company about 5 years ago, and I know the owner still really well. I put in a VP, and she did really, really well. But they've gone from 7 to $27 million in those 5 years. That's fun, right?
Yeah.
They've gone from a team of 7 to 15 salespeople. That's fun, right? And so this lifestyle idea, I doubt I'll ever retire again. I may not have 5 or 6 or 8 clients at a time. I may have 1 or 2 at a time, but it keeps my mind sharp and it makes me happy.
I think that's a very similar experience I have. We like to tell our CMOs that our goal is to help them build the perfect practice, but it's different for everyone. And somebody that comes in and wants a lifestyle business, how do you build that? We're going to help you do it. Somebody comes in and wants to build a firm that they can exit one day for $1 million. How do you do that? Let's help you do that. Somebody just wants to carry a small load of clients, but it's almost a full-time load. How do we help you do that? Because it is different for everyone. And that's what's unique about the fractional space. Everybody's got different motives for being in it. But when you're in it, you've got to deliver the service fractionally and well. And that there's an art to that also. I think you're, as a sales leader, you would probably share the way you lead an organization fractionally is different than if you were full-time.
Oh, absolutely. And it has to be. I love, this came up recently with one of my clients I just finished last month. I love morning huddles. I mean, 7 a.m. huddles, the sales team, across the country, get on the Teams meeting, etc. As a fractional, I can't do that because I have other clients I'm dealing with at 7 o'clock in the morning, as an example. Um, so you do have to do it differently. But, a lot of owners ask me, go, how can you do what a normal person does in a week, in a day? Because usually I'm at a client for a day, a week. I've been doing this a long time. I know how to run an L10 or a sales meeting. I understand how to do one-on-ones, and I can do in 15 minutes what someone that's got 5 years of experience takes an hour. I can do comp plans. I can look at a CRM, have the right reports come out. And, most owners, when I really dig down and that are managing the sales team, and I start looking at how much time are you really spending with them? They may have a sales team meeting. They may have some water cooler talk with that salesperson, or maybe some emails. But me giving them 8 to 10 hours a week is almost always more than that owner gives them in a month.
Right. How likely it is that we're going to be replaced with AI soon, John, the fractional leaders?
I think you might have to worry about that. I'm not worried about it at all. Sales will always be a relationship. If you're buying a commodity on Amazon, I get it, right? But most of my clients, are selling B2B, so business to business. They're selling technology and or service, and that's something you just need to have a relationship with. If I was a copywriter today, with what I've done with Chat GPT, I'd be looking for something coming up soon, right? And not that copywriting's all marketing. That's part of marketing, right? Um, those jobs that require human to human relationship, I don't think have to worry about AI. But I think those positions, if I was a CPA, I mean, it was kind of funny if you saw, during COVID, a lot of accounting went virtual, it went offshore. And if it can go virtual and offshore, just saying, an AI agent probably can do a lot of that stuff. So those are the type of positions I worry about. One thing, though, that I'm cautioning owners, AI is changing. It's changing daily. It's changing a lot. And if they don't have the time or personnel to really figure out how AI is going to affect their company, then they need, people like me, people like you, where we have the resources, where we're looking at how does AI change sales? How does AI change marketing? How can we do it protecting our IP? If you just go on Chat GPT, the free service, and you throw in your marketing plan or your sales plan, that goes to the world. And a lot of owners don't understand that. So we have to have a closed system, and we're using a lot more AI in sales today to target the right customers, to help us write let's say the email message or the copy to that specific person, that specific personality type, which really means it's going to be read and we communicate better. So we're getting much, much more efficient. I used to say sales back in the 1990s was taking a shotgun, shooting it in the air, and praying that a duck flew through it. Right? Yeah. Today, back, when we started, let's say in the 2000s, we were using a rifle. We had hard sights, but we were using a rifle. Today, I mean, we're using a sniper rifle with a high-powered, scope on it. It's got a tripod, so it's sitting there. I mean, it's almost sometimes not fair. When you can, and it's again from marketing, when I can look at how many times you've been on my website, what things you've opened, Did you attend a webinar? Did you see, my post on LinkedIn? When I can gather all this information, exactly what page you're looking at on my website, I know what products you're looking at, and you can give me the signals going ding ding, I'm ready to buy. When marketing hands that to me, the sales guy, particularly, they can know that they're on the website right then, can pick up a phone and go, "Hey, Joe, I heard you're looking at our XYZ." He goes, "Yeah, I'm on your website right now." It gets a little scary in some ways because most people don't know we can do that. But it does make it much easier to help that customer through their journey in buying our product or service.
Yeah. I think AI is probably taking away more marketing jobs and sales jobs right now for sure. We're seeing on the tactical side of marketing and maybe even some of the operational side of marketing, AI is coming through and doing a lot of what lower level marketers, tactically minded marketers would do, especially in copy and messaging. But I've also seen it being misused when there's not somebody that knows what they need to know to make sure that that's not going off the rails. You see a lot of great stuff come out of AI. You also see a lot of awful stuff come out of AI. And you need someone there that can kind of regulate it and make sure only the good stuff's going out to the client. And without that governor, it can be very, very dangerous.
I got an email 2 days ago from one of our productivity partners, and it was from their accounting group, not in the US. And my response was, I hope AI wrote this email because it was so, how do I say it nicely? It was so sterile about an issue that had to be done that no one in the right mind would have written that in the way it was, right? And if you just let AI do it without looking at it, that can be a real scary thing. I mean, and on top of that, for those that don't know, we call it having hallucinogens. If AI doesn't actually know what the answer should be, it'll make it up. And so we need to have someone that can control that. Looking at AI and customer service, we're all pretty familiar, with chatbots that are on websites, and those used to be controlled by human beings. But today, then they went to kind of an automatic answering system. But now with AI, they're intuitive. They're thinking about what is your next question going to be? And customer service, whether you put that under marketing or you put that under sales, I mean, that's changing a lot of jobs in customer service today.
So speaking about jobs, hiring is a big issue for most businesses. How do you as a sales leader get involved in recruiting and hiring needs that clients have?
Almost every one of my clients I have to hire. Sometimes I have to fire. It's a big issue. I have a hugely robust methodology to do this. It's not short. It takes time, right? But if you look at a psychographic of what does this salesperson need to do, not a job description, what are they going to be doing every day, right? How are they going to be doing it? Are they in person? Are they on video? So I use typically an assessment called OMG and a recruiting company named Amplify. And I look at what does this person really need to do to be successful? And the OMG assessment allows me to really look at their DNA, to look at how do they think? How do they sell? What type of things do they sell? I often say, it's really, really hard to take a product salesperson that's been selling some widget for 20 years and have them sell service. It's a different sell, right? And so by doing that assessment of really what does this person need to look like, we're able to really get through a lot of or to get to the goal. In today's world, our prices have gone up ridiculous with the whole economy as it is. Someone I used to be able to hire, for 60,000 is now 90,000 or more. And I always, in the sales world, I'm able to, because of KPIs and just because of culture, I always hire based on a base salary plus commission. And the commission plan is based mostly on profit, and it allows me to drive the behaviors in that salesperson that I want to have for the company. I know if you do these things, then you're going to get sales and profit that's going to drive the rest of the company. And so, in today's world, I seldom hire someone that's looking for a job. I generally am looking at someone that's what we call passive, that's pretty happy where they are today. But I show them how if they move to this role, it's going to be a stretch for them. It's going to be a little bit harder for them. They're going to enjoy winning. Salespeople love to win. Everyone thinks it's about money, and it's really not. Yeah, we like to make a lot of money in sales, but it's about winning. It's about solving that problem. That's the person I want on my team. If we show them it's a stretch, that they're able to grow, now you're going to get the right type of person into that sales role. And your company is only as good as your people in the end. And your sales team's only as good as the people you have on there. Often when I come into a company, we have a prima donna that's been allowed to run amok, is a good word, I guess. And the manufacturing hates them, marketing hates them. Everyone doesn't like this guy or gal, but they bring in a lot of sales. Well, a little bit of poison in a batch of coffee will kill everyone. And so often we have to either have a reset with that person and put them back into the line, which works once in a while, but not often, or we have to plan and replace that person.
We generally don't come into a situation where we're running into the same type of scenarios as a marketer. We're usually the first strategic marketing leader they've had, and they've got an underdeveloped team. And so our hiring comes into place. How do we build that team up? How do we start? We're not normally replacing people. We may be replacing agencies that have been just trying to sell stuff, not be strategic at all. But I understand in your role, you're going to be running into some of those difficult salespeople from day one, and you just probably have with a quick glance, who's going and who's staying. But it's a process to go through. I'm curious.
It's
as a salesperson,
pretty obvious.
As a salesperson, this is a question I always have. It comes up a lot, and we spend a lot of time making sure marketing and sales align. What are 3 of the metrics from marketing that you think are most important to a company?
Ooh. I don't care about impressions. I care about qualified leads.
Okay.
Right. And a lot of marketing people go, wow, look at this ad. It got, 20,000 impressions. And I go, how many people filled out the form?
Yeah.
Right. So in the end, it's really about qualified leads. And as we talked about, you're pushing them down the funnel a lot further. So one of my SaaS clients, marketing was really responsible to drive to a demo. So not only qualified, but bringing them to a demo. And if they're a qualified person in a demo, they're going to close at a fairly high rate, right? If your technology solves their problem. What else would I want marketing to do from a KPI and a metric?
I'll share one just while you're thinking, but I know I put you on the spot. So one of the metrics that I think are really valuable for marketing to own and to talk through is client lifetime value, CLV. A lot of times people don't even think about it. And it's surprising when we go into strategic foundation sessions with our clients that the conversation around what's the lifetime value of that client seems to be a little bit foreign to them. And we walk them through like, well, it's the gross revenue over the lifetime of the client, less the cost to acquire the client, less the cost to service the client. And then that's the lifetime value. And when you look at your different ICPs, like who's your ICP should be the most profitable client you have over the lifetime, not necessarily the onset, but over the lifetime. And when you have that conversation and you look at your different sets of customers, you start to see clearly, oh, this is the client that makes us the most money. That's the client type that we should be going after. That's where marketing should find more of those types of clients, understand that's psychographic and geographics, so we can get more of those clients. And I think that number, lifetime value.
It's not just the easy client, right? It's
right.
The client that's going to stay with you the longest. In the SaaS world or subscription world, I talk about life of the customer, right? Mm-hmm. A lot, because if they're giving you $100 per month and they're going to stay with you for 9 years, one thing that if you look at CAC or the customer acquisition cost, that used to be driven by sales. That's now almost completely driven by marketing. So one of those KPIs really is, what is the CAC? What is the cost of acquiring a customer? Because we don't price it right at that point, then we can actually lose money for every customer we get.
Yeah. CAC is the other number I was going to suggest, that cost of acquisition, it's inclusive of sales and marketing. And a lot of times when we go into clients that haven't had a strong marketing leader, it is still all sales. So they're like, oh, our customer, I get this comment all the time. Our acquisition cost is zero. I go, what do you mean it's zero? We don't spend anything on marketing. Well, tell me about your sales force. How much are you spending on them? Oh, well, we've got 10 salespeople. That's not marketing. Well, that still is a cost of acquiring a customer. And that's an aha moment too, because it's not just marketing costs you got to look at too. It's not how much money you spend on Google to bring in a lead. It's how much money you spend on Google and the SDR that followed up and the salesperson that closed it and the engineers that needed to be in the demos. And all of that is part of your acquisition costs.
Well, and one of the metrics that I try and drive marketing on, and it's not terribly intuitive, but it's what happens after acquisition, right? The messaging to our customers doesn't generally happen by sales, maybe account management at that point, but marketing's really responsible for keeping what new products are out there. Why should they stay with us? So when you look at not only CAC, you also have to look at churn, right? Yeah. So how many customers do we lose? And if we keep our customers happy, engaged, doing surveys, doing customer satisfaction surveys, it's generally outside of my purview as a sales leader, but as an executive team member, it's in my purview, right? And I want to know that our customers are happy and continuing to buy, because that, again, grows that lifetime value. Right. I had a client that was in the security space, right? So cameras and all those type of things for businesses. His company, he's third generation, but he keeps on average a client for over 9 years. That's kind of nice, right?
Yeah.
And you do that because of good service, good products, but also good messaging. So having marketing continue that messaging after acquisition, I think, is really important, and something that's not terribly intuitive to most small businesses, how important that is. I mean, if you ask, how many small businesses do customer satisfaction surveys? In my experience, before I'm there, I would say less than 10%.
Right. Yeah, churn is the number one lever to increase client lifetime value. And people don't understand that. If you can, I've got a formula and we shared in our foundation session. I'm going to probably butcher the exact math, but it's something like if you can increase retention rate from 80 to 90%, you can double lifetime value. So a 10% increase in retention rate can double lifetime value. So that $10,000 lifetime value can turn to 20 just by having a 10% increase in retention. That is so much more effective than from an investment standpoint than going out and finding new clients.
Yeah, you know them already.
You know them already.
They've used your service or your product.
Yeah. How do you stop pissing them off? How do you keep them? How do you upsell? Like all of that goes into it.
Well, and we talk about retention, right, and churn in like SaaS models or subscription models, but believe it or not, it's the same in equipment sales. It's the same in product sales. It's getting them to come back and buy that replacement product, getting them come back and buy that upgrade, getting them come back and buy that maintenance program for that equipment. I have a brand new client that sells equipment in the X-ray world for $200,000 to $600,000. Well, it's a nice sell, right? But where do you get the extra money for them? The project's going to last probably 5 to 20 years. We want to go in there and maintain it. We want to go in there and give them upgrades. We want to make sure the software is updated as we go. And that is driven through account management, but a lot it's driven through messaging from marketing. And in a non-SaaS or non-subscription model, there's still that play that you need to have.
The other metric that it's a little harder to define, but I like the concept of inbound versus outbound and that ratio. And, inbound leads, I think people are fairly familiar, that's coming in through content or SEO or ads, or somehow you're getting a lead in. And outbound is typically, a sales approach, a cold call, some sort of outbound effort. But then there's this in-between area called like referrals. And, is a referral an outbound effort that drove the referral, or is it a result of an inbound effort? And I think that gray area of how do you classify referrals is a really interesting conversation to have with salespeople. What do you think? Is that an inbound lead or an outbound lead?
Boy, I just went through this with a SaaS company. I mean, in gory detail, right? So we ended up having outbound, inbound, and something we call rebound. Because what we found is some of the inbound leads were actually rebounds, right? We'd talked to them through SDRs. We may have had a demo already with them, and then timing wasn't right or whatnot. And then they came from inbound, but they weren't brought to us from, let's say, a marketing ad. They were reminded. Yeah. They re-engaged, right? When you talk about referrals, a friend of mine ran a company. This is now 7 years ago. I did a big blog on LinkedIn about this. So he was, again, it was a software company, and he was getting all these inbound leads. And he went to marketing, and he goes, Joe, can you tell me where these are coming from? And marketing goes, well, that was it came from Google, from a Google search. This one came as a click, et cetera. He goes, no, why did they come to us? He went out and hired an intern in college and had her call 2,000 of these clients. She was able to verify 71% of them came to that site because someone told them about the company name or the product name or gave them the website. 71%. Now, they may have heard about it. I mean, Coke still does advertising, right? When you go into 7-Eleven, you buy a Coke, they do the advertising for a reason, right? But on a referral, there's so much complexity to it. I had in the home healthcare world, I had my salespeople calling our good customers, our champions, and going, your franchise in Missouri, there's a franchise across the way in Kansas. Do you know them? Can you introduce me? Can you tell them about how our software is helping you? Right? That is an outbound referral. Others, though, are inbound. We just don't know it.
Yeah, it's a gray area for sure. We build our fractional practices just like you do on referrals, building referral partners. And when those referral partners sometimes refer us, somebody comes in through our website form. How did you hear about us? Oh, John referred me. Oh, well, yes, he did. You're an inbound lead that was referred to me by John. Or they call me up on the phone and say, John told me to call you, or you send me an email that says, John, go talk to this person. Those are all referrals. And in my definition, they're all inbound versus me knocking on doors, making phone calls, sending out emails, trying to talk directly to a customer. That's how.
What would you call it? What would you call it if you called me and said, John, I see that you're connected to George on LinkedIn. Do you know him well enough that you can introduce me? Would that be an outbound at that point?
And you would introduce me how?
We'll go to lunch together and I'll introduce you.
I think it would be outbound. Is how, if you put me on the spot, because I would
do that a lot.
I would then take the direct conversation and try to turn it into a sale. Versus if that person came to you and had lunch with you and said, "I'm looking for a marketing person." Oh, let's set up lunch with Joe. That's an inbound referral.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I think
it's a fine gray line, and we need them all.
We need them all. But what I find interesting, and I've been doing a lot of, the reason I brought this up is I've been doing a lot of thinking about strategic marketing metrics and really how to help a company turn marketing more into a profit discussion than an expense discussion. And having there should be a ratio of inbound to outbound leads that makes sense for an organization. When it's all outbound, that means it's just the sales force. If it's all inbound, there's no sale force at all. There's some businesses, SaaS being one, it might be all inbound. Like you don't need a salesperson. If you do, and marketing's role there is different than a highly word of mouth or highly harassment selling, cold calling company. That's the other end of the spectrum. But most companies are somewhere in between, and marketing should be able to identify that and manage that ratio for scale, because it's hard to scale a company that's all outbound, and it's easy to scale a company that's all inbound. Most people are in between somewhere, and usually when we start, it's more outbound than inbound. And my job or our job is to increase the inbound leads to a point where the cost to do that is less than the lifetime value of the client, and that ratio allows for scale.
And I think you use the word lifetime value because that really becomes the important thing. You can't have a sales force, an SDR force calling for $100 sale.
Right.
Just doesn't make sense. You can if it's a $5,000 sale, as an example, whatever that number is. And again, if it's SaaS, it's $100 a month, but if they're staying 5 years, you're getting to that point where it makes sense. But you do need some combination. I think looking at lifetime value is kind of where you go, where you start balancing more inbound to outbound, et cetera. If I'm selling a $200,000 to $600,000 machine, an X-ray machine, it's a new client, it's probably not going to be overnight. You're probably going to have a relationship and go through a whole bunch of signature in that process.
Yep. Well, I think that's where we started the conversation with marketing metrics that matter. And when you say that, most people start where we started: impressions, leads. But the ones that really matter from a strategic marketing perspective are lifetime value, customer acquisition cost, inbound, outbound lead ratios. And those are things strategically that once you get your hands around and start to discuss as a leadership team, these are trunk decisions now. So we take that lifetime value of this particular client sector we want to go after. It's this cost of acquisition to do it with sales only. But if we invest this much in marketing, we can do it with a different inbound outbound ratio and the cost of acquisition goes down, the capacity goes up, is it worth the investment? Yes or no? A lot of times the answer is dependent upon like the cash flow of the company, because lifetime value is like a 10-year decision. Cash flow is like next 90 days. So that's where the rubber meets the road generally.
Well, and taking that to the next step, and it really goes into product development, right? So if we have this niche, this vertical niche, this customer base, do we go try and create another product that solves another one of their needs? Or do we build a new product for a different niche or modify our current product for a different niche? And understanding lifetime value and CAC, or customer acquisition cost, helps you make that decision, because generally a company that's going to grow over time can't be stagnant on their product. They have to either come up with new products or new markets.
Yeah.
You can grow a company, right? But being able to really look at that and go, yeah, there are these other problems at this market, and if it's going to cost us $1 million to create it, and I can get $10 million in business in that known market, that's probably cheaper than spending $1 million going after a new market where we don't have name recognition, branding, all those things.
Yep. Well, I think that's just a good example of how sales and marketing needs to work together within our organization strategically. And that's what fractionals do. Like, we can come in at that high level, have those strategic discussions, help that owner think through marketing and sales differently than simply how many calls did you make this week? How many impressions did you get? Like, those are trivial answers. What's my cost of acquisition cost? What's the lifetime value? How do I determine what's the right investment to make in the future decisions of product development and staffing and hiring? Those are the decisions that you want a senior fractional leader involved in, not a junior salesperson or marketer.
And we don't talk about this very often, but we probably should. When you bring in fractionals, I don't have an empire. I don't need to protect my empire. I don't have to play the political games. I'm going to be there for a specific amount of time, and I'm going to make decisions based on the bloody truth. I don't have to protect anyone. I don't have to protect, quote, my reputation. I'm there to get something done. In my case, it's to grow revenue and profit, not just, I focus on profit more than the revenue, which most owners should. I'm there to put in a car that's able to run and scale. When you're there, you don't have an empire either. The CFO doesn't have an empire. We're there. I hate to use the analogy, but I've used it in the past. We're gunslingers. We're coming to that small desert town, and there's some bad guys there, and our job is to shoot them and save the doctor and the school marm from all this harassment so that the town can grow. And so we come in, like gunslingers, solve all the problems, and then the company can thrive, not just survive.
Yeah, probably not the most politically correct analogy, but it works.
I've been accused of that more times than not.
Yes.
So.
Well, you don't have an empire, so you don't care anymore, right?
The one beautiful thing about fractionals, and I know we talk about it amongst ourselves, at this point in our careers and lives, we don't have to work with people we don't like.
Right.
We don't have to work with people that, are assholes, and I've had that happen where I've been asked to go into a company and it was obvious that the culture and the person wasn't someone I wanted to be around. And, this is what you need to do. Have fun doing it. And that is one of the joys that we get to do. We get to help people that we like, people that, I still get invited to Christmas parties from clients 8, 9 years ago, right? I still get invited to the picnic. We stay in touch. Last year, I had 3 clients for the second time. In one case, I'd hired their sales team, sales leader, and he wanted me to help him hire another salesperson. That happened with 2. In one, I'd hired my replacement. She was there 5 years, and she left the state, and they asked me to come back in as an interim to run the sales team, do some tuning up a little bit here and there, and then hire my replacement. That's it's kind of fun because I didn't have to relearn the company.
Yeah, very fun. Well, it's been great having you on the show today. We could keep going for hours, I think, but we're running out of time and people are probably running out of battery on their devices. But thank you for being here. I really appreciate it, John.
Joe, this was really fun. And we've talked about how important it is for marketing and sales to be together and on the same page. And I think we demonstrated that with our discussion.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you for our listeners. I hope you learned a little bit about marketing, a little about AI, a little about John, a little about me and our organizations. And if you want to reach out, I'm sure John would love to hear from you. John, is there a great suggestion for them to reach out to you directly?
John Lee at salesacceleration.com or look at LinkedIn. All my contact information is there.
Great. All right. So you heard it from John, and thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe or download or do whatever you're supposed to do on your devices to let us know you like what you heard, and listen for more from the Fractional C-Suite Retreat. Thank you. And that's a wrap. There's another successful episode of the Fractional C-Suite Retreat. See our show notes and more episodes at fractionalcsuiteretreat.com. This podcast is sponsored by Your CMO, helping organizations grow, save time and money with better marketing strategy and fractional execution. Visit them at yorcmo.com, yourcmo.com. Spelled wrong on purpose.